Okay, this is the next video for Orbitas. What we're going to look at in this video is our basic collection of locations. Locations are the building blocks of the Orbitas software, so there's a lot of functionality that they'll do, but we're going to start by just talking about the very basics. Okay, so to begin, we're going to launch Orbitas just like always from our app icon. We're going to open a job that we'd already created called example 012822. We created this in the tutorial project where we were talking about managing jobs. So we're going to click on that. It's going to open up, and you're going to notice we have the blue teardrop the blue triangle icon. The blue triangle means I have integrated location services turned on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them off real fast and connect to that low energy Bluetooth hysteria that I have on. And as soon as I turn it off, took a second there, but you can see it turned red and then immediately to yellow. It's giving me a corrected location icon, and I have about 1.5 foot accuracy. So now is a good time to talk about the color codes that we have inside Orbitas for our teardrop icons. So the 3 teardrops are going to be red. If you see a red, it means that you don't have enough satellites to determine a 3-dimensional fix for Orbitas for whatever reason. If you see orange, orange is going to mean that you have a autonomous or uncorrected GNSS position. Yellow means we're going to have a corrected position, differentially corrected. And then finally, our green state, which we'll look at when we talk about RTK corrections, is going to mean we're applying some sort of an RTK correction to the signal. So to collect a location, it's very, very simple. We're going to go back down to the toolbox at the bottom of the screen. We're going to click on the icon, looks like a teardrop with a little plus sign. When I click plus, it's going to open up a new location form. It's automatically going to give my location a name. I have a position for a note. I have latitude, longitude, which is going to be continually incrementing. I have a parent field. That's represented by an icon over here with a little parent and child. We have what we call a location type icon. It's represented by a teardrop icon on a map. We have what we call a line icon, which represents the type of line we're collecting. We have a camera icon. We have sensor data, which we'll cover when we look at locators. And then finally, at the very bottom of the screen, we're going to have horizontal and vertical accuracy values and DOP information. So the horizontal and vertical are going to be in metric. Even though we're going to display them on the main screen in Imperial, if you have Imperial chosen, we're only going to ever collect them in metric because that's what the GPS is actually sending as raw accuracy values, and we want to collect them in their raw state. So you can see I have a horizontal value of about 0.5 meter, so roughly 1.5 to 2 feet. If I wanted to save this position, I click the save button at the top of the screen, and it's going to end my location, and I just collected my first location, location number 1. We're going to collect a second location, talk about a few more things in that screen. Before I do that, though, I'm going to click on my little teardrop icon. I'm going to turn integrated location services back on. I'm going to do this for 2 reasons. First is I want to show you collecting with a integrated service. And then the second thing is I wanted to have a little distance between my actual location and what my integrated services are showing as my location. So I'm going to collect a location, and this one's going to be called location 2. The horizontal and vertical accuracy aren't very accurate because it's going to be grabbing that from the integrated GPS in my iPad now. The second thing I want to talk about is the naming. So the naming, my first location was called 1, and now I'm on location number 2. This is just a text field. This is so you can identify what was it I collected It's what we call the location name. It doesn't have to represent anything. It can just be a dumb numbering system. That's why we just have it numbered by default. If I wanted to, perhaps I want to give this a pole number. Maybe this is a utility pole, so I'm going to give it a pole number, pole 34686. I could be calling that an edge of pavement. I can also put a note. Maybe I wanted to note this is a wood pole. So I'll put a note in there. And then I'll hit save. So if I look at my screen, I collected 2 locations. One was called number 1. The other was called pole 34686. Pretty simple. The things that are a little more powerful that are happening kind of in the background are what we call the location type and the line type. So you notice it put a green line behind that location, and it's actually building up this line. The line type is going to be discussed in a future video, but essentially the line type is established here on the top right hand side of the screen before we ever start collecting. So I was selected as, I believe, a secondary new overhead. If I wanted to call this a primary new overhead, I could select that line type. And now if I go and collect another feature, you'll see what happens. But before I do that, I'm going to show you a third type of location. This is kind of an advanced feature. Remember, we collected a location with an hysteria by using this icon. Then we turned on integrated services and collected another location with that icon. I'm going to collect a third type, which works out really good for these demonstrations. And it's right below integrated location services. It's something called tap to place. We're going to click on that. And what that's going to allow me to do is place an icon on my Google map. So my integrated service isn't jumping around as much as I would have liked it to. So I'm going to go and place an icon right on the side of this building, right on the Google map. And I do that by holding down on that position. It's now calling this location 3. If I look down here under my line type that I pointed out before, it now says primary new overhead. So by selecting that line type on the screen before I collect my position, it tells me what type of line I'm collecting. And I'm just going to hit save again. And now I've collected a third point on that. This one is actually a new overhead line. And I'm going to come down here to the corner of the building. I'm going to collect a 4th point. This one's called location number 4. It remembers that I want it to be on a primary new overhead. But just to show you, I have lots of different options in Orbitas. If I forgot to change that line type before I started collecting, I could come into it right now and tell it I want that to be a secondary new underground. And I can switch it right in here. So I can have a new line type per segment that I'm collecting. I hit save, and it calls it a secondary new underground. And you notice that I color-coded that line type red. We're going to go in and collect another location here. Location number 5. I'm going to do 2 things here. The first is I'm going to show you this location type. We've been collecting poles up till now. Well, I'm going to go ahead and change what I call our location type. Instead of collecting a pole, I want to collect something called a station. The location type, just like line type, is user customizable. We do talk about this more in configuration tutorials, but these are defined by your subscription administrator, and you can have unlimited different types of locations, icons for those locations, as well as lines and icons for those lines, and color codes for those lines. So I've changed that to be a station rather than a pole. And what I want to do is come in here and use something called naming. So I already showed you that this is a text field. it's already giving it a dumb naming, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, counting up. I can type in there and call it anything I want. Or I can click on the actual naming, and what's going to happen is it's going to pull up a box, and it says, well, based on the counter right now, my next location will be called location number 6. But maybe I want to start this back at 1. And the reason I wanted to start it back at 1 is I'm going to change the prefix. I want to give it a prefix of stations because now I'm collecting stations and I want it to start back at 1. So I'm going to hit save. And now this is called stations 1. Let's hit save. And you'll see what happens is it changed my icon because I'm not collecting a pole anymore. I collected a station. And I changed the naming where it's now called station 1. And I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to call it station 2. We're going to add one final level of detail here. I'm going to go back to this first pole I collected. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to edit my location. I want to edit this for a reason. I want to come over here, and I want to show you two things. I can change any of these values here inside my location. I could change the type. I could change the parent, which we'll cover in a separate video. I could change the name or the note, but I can also change the line type. So I wanted this to be on that secondary new underground. I'll go ahead and change it, even though I've already collected it. I can just change that line. And then finally, I want to show you the little camera feature here. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to click on the camera icon. It's going to say, Orbitas would like to access your camera. Do you want to allow it? Yes, I do. And what that's going to allow me to do is use the built-in camera in my iOS device to store a photo. I then hit use photo, and I can see the thumbnail icon. And that photo is now attached to this location called pole 34686. We're going to show you what you can do with those photos after when we upload this job. But for now, we're just going to talk about attaching that photo to the location. And I'll hit save to accept my changes. And there we go. It changed my line type. I have a photo attached to this point. We have two different types of lines that we've collected, two different types of location type. And that's how you collect locations.